Thank you, Walker Stalker Cruisers, for joining us. This is Behind the Scenes with Robert Kirkman. We'll be talking all things Walking Dead. We're going to start with some back and forth. We'll move into some audience questions. Basically, we want to find out what makes the Walking Dead tick and kind of how it all came to be.
Before we start, though, how many of you were in this room yesterday when I was robbed during that trivia thing? I did not think I would have to be in this room again. I'm not happy about that.
I did see that. You were robbed.
Yes. I disagree.
So, before The Walking Dead, obviously George Romero's zombie movies were hugely inspirational. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about your influences. I mean, how did you grow up watching those? What made zombies tick for you, and how important were that original Dead trilogy?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely essential to the development of Walking Dead. I mean, Walking Dead wouldn't exist if it weren't for Romero. I like to say that Robert Kirkman is to George Romero as Stephanie Meyer is to Bram Stoker. Because I just took that stuff and turned it into a weird soap opera. So, not really, and that's fine. But I wasn't really allowed to watch horror movies as a child, so I experienced the VHS. I almost said DVD, but I experienced the VHS boxes at the video store like everyone else, and that was always like a forbidden fruit. And I did encounter Night of the Living Dead on network television for the first time, because a lot of Night of the Living Dead fans out there? That's good.
They're better,
Of course. There was a Fox affiliate when that channel had first started that, was hungry for programming, and so they would just run Night of the Living Dead late at night. And I caught it one night, watched it, and went to school very tired the next day. That was my first experience with Romero, and then I didn't watch the movie. I never saw Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead until I was like 18 or 19, and was actually able to seek the movies out on my own. And then I think I watched one of them like every night for a month, just really diving in and falling in love with the material. And it always occurred to me that they're really great character studies, and you get to know these people over the course of a film, and you really grow to care about them and worry about them, and then the movie just ends. And I always hated that part. I was like, I want to see where those people in the helicopter at the end of Dawn of the Dead fly to next, and I want to see where the people in the helicopter at the end of Day of the Dead fly to next. I always wanted to do fan fiction where the two helicopters land on the same island, and they're like, oh man, this mall was crazy. Oh, this bunker, whew, what a mess. Your helicopter's nicer than mine. My movie was made a few years later. Yeah, and so it occurred to me that no one had ever really done a continuing narrative set in a apocalyptic zombie world, and that it was just a really great opportunity for storytelling. You could really follow characters for years and years, and get to know them, and be heartbroken when they die, and watch them grow and evolve over time, and then here we are. So. If Walking Dead had been a failure, it would have just been a weird comic book that lasted 6 issues. It was weird. The only way that concept actually paid off is if it lasted for years, which up to that point, every book I had ever done had been canceled very quickly. So it was very bold of me to come up with a concept that only worked in success. So.
When you originally pitched it, I know that you at least faced maybe some uphill battles because zombies weren't as popular. I mean, not even close to what they are now. It was always vampires, and your Frankenstein, and Mummy.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. We were in France at MIPCOM, they're like a TV convention, and I was with Andrew Lincoln and Sarah Wayne Callies, and we were promoting Walking Dead before the show had debuted, and every single question was, are zombies the new vampires? Vampires are so popular. How could you think to do something about zombies? Nobody likes zombies. It's all about vampires. And it's funny because then I did Outcast, and all of it was like, are demons the new zombies? I was like, yeah, they are.
So I want to talk a little bit about your creative process for the comic book series and how that changed. I guess first, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, what's your process with Charlie Adler? You know, I know he's across the pond.
Yeah.
And yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Early on, when Charlie started on the book with issue 7, we would either email back and forth, or we'd get on Skype. I think that existed back then, or some version of Skype. Or, you know, every now and then we'd actually talk on the phone, which was very expensive and something I couldn't really afford back then. You know, I always had years and years of plans, and so he would be like, well, you know, like we were talking about issue 7, and he'd be like, well, what's going to happen with Rick? And I'd be like, well, you know, they're going to find this town called Woodbury, and there's this governor guy there that's going to cut his hand off, and, you know, and they're going to be living in this prison for a while. That guy's going to attack the prison and kill everybody. It's going to be pretty cool. And then, like, issue 12, they'd be on Herschel's farm, and he'd be like, when's this governor going to cut Rick's hand off? Like, what's going on? And he found it very frustrating. And so after a while, he would say, I don't want you to tell me your plans because you always change your mind. And I was like, Charlie, I'm not changing my mind. It just takes me a long time to get to this stuff. And so he eventually just said, I don't want to know anything. Like, I want to read the scripts like the audience and be your first audience member and give you my first reactions, you know, not knowing what's coming. And so we've operated like that for years, which is really, really great because, you know, he will sometimes get a script and be like, I don't know about this one. You know, like, I think the first time that happened was Michonne's Torture of the Governor. He was like, he got the script for that, which is, you know, absolutely horrific. And he was like, yeah, this is too far. And I said, no, it's not. And I said it's important to me that we didn't show what happened to Michonne, but we do show what happened to the governor. And I think that that'll be an important thing for the audience, and it'll be cathartic to a certain extent because Michonne's such a beloved character, and I had to pitch him as if he was my editor, which is really great because I don't have that for the most part. Like, you know, I could put a laser shooting dog in the comic and there's really no one to stop me except for Charlie Adler. So, you know, it's really great. I'm not going to talk about what it is, but in the last 10 issues, there was an issue that I wrote where something, you know, very monumental happened, and Charlie wrote me and he said, yeah, I don't agree with this. I don't think we should do this. And my initial thought was, who do you think you are? But then I calmed down and decided to be a reasonable human being, and I thought about what he was saying and the case he was making, and I realized that I agreed with it. And so I ended up rewriting the last like 10 pages of the issue and changing the outcome dramatically. You know, and that's because, you know, he didn't know that storyline was coming, and so he can read it fresh. And I think it made the story better. One day I'll tell you guys what it is.
Yeah, I want to know.
Not today.
Now, I know you did something, well, I guess reverse of that. Is that you changed something, I guess at the last moment, I remember Abraham's bolt to the head was not originally planned and something to fear.
Yeah.
So, I guess, can you talk about that? Are there any other stories that you want to share about things that you had it all planned out? Charlie's working on it, like, hey, like, we got to change this.
Yeah, the only two times that Charlie's, you know, Charlie's only changed something once, but the other time he suggested it. There have been times where a lot of the character deaths are very laboriously set up. They're planned for years and years. I've introduced characters knowing exactly how they die, knowing, okay, I've got this character for 25 issues, I've got to make characters like them in 3 issues so that, you know, it's a really big death when it comes. And I'm always working toward that. But I really want to maintain the spontaneity of life, because I think that, you know, something that really makes The Walking Dead appealing is the fact that you never really know what's going to happen next, and literally anything could happen to any of the characters next. Although, you know, it's been like 175 issues and Rick hasn't died yet, so maybe someone's safe. But one day you'll be like, wow, we killed Rick, crazy. So anyway, it's coming. But Abraham's death, I ended an issue with Abraham and Eugene walking back to Alexandria, and Eugene was saying something like, well, I've got you to protect me, and then you see that Dwight is watching them and the Saviors are ready to attack, and so it was, you know, it was a cliffhanger it was extremely poorly written, because the plan was that they would get attacked and Abraham would save Eugene and get back into Alexandria. And as a storyteller, you never want to tell the audience what they're going to do and then have the characters do it. Like, that's like writing 101. That's just the absolute worst thing you can do. If you, I'll crap on that most recent Alien movie. Like, they do that in the third act of that movie.
I hate that movie.
They're like, we have to get this car into space and it'll kill the aliens. And then for 25 minutes, you watch them get the car into space and kill the aliens. And I was like, that's not the end of the movie, is it? Oh, it is. So anyway, what I'm saying is I'm better than Ridley Scott. I don't mean that.
You didn't write it. It's okay.
Okay. But anyway, beautiful looking movie. Ridley Scott's never going to work with me now. That was a mistake. He's old. Maybe I'll forget. So anyway, yeah. So I wrote that scene fully intending for Abraham to live, and then I was just like, that's, you know, the worst. Like, I'm just being terrible. And it was great that I had the freedom to just kill Abraham on page 2 without, and I mean, there was tons of stuff that was being set up with Holly and storylines that I had planned for Abraham that I just broomed out because I just arbitrarily decided to kill him. And a lot of people get mad when I say that because they're like, Abraham's my favorite character. Like, you don't care about Abraham. Like, why, like, how could you just do that? And I would say, you know, like, I'm not happy about it either. I feel like I'm a slave to the story sometimes, and that's true. You know, I talked about that with the Andrea death. You know, it's really upsetting to me. Andrea especially, I spent weeks going, I really shouldn't do this. I don't feel good about this. Like, this is not great. But then I end up doing it. So now I end up rambling. So I apologize.
No, I mean, I think that's an important point to make. I mean, we think, I mean, as fans, you know, everyone's really attached to these characters, and maybe in some cases they don't realize that you've been with these characters longer, that you feel these deaths as much as they do, if not more so.
Yeah, I actually, I totally started crying on a plane when I was writing the Andrea scene, and I was like, people are gonna think I am losing my mind. This is not good. But yeah, it is emotional. And I feel like it has to be. Because if it's not emotional for me, then it's not emotional for the audience, and then it's not worth doing.
That's a good point. So talking a little bit about the TV show, I mean, obviously, or maybe it was the plan from the beginning. I don't think it was.
It wasn't.
Yeah. So how did that come about? I know there were some pitches. How long did it take before it landed with Darabont and AMC? I heard about a procedural with NBC that was kind of like they were trying to get you to go that way.
Yeah, we set it up at NBC, and I mean, the story goes that. You know, we set it up with NBC, and I was told that they were definitely going to make it, and so, you know, I was naive and was like telling my friends and family, like, oh my God, there's going to be a Walking Dead show on NBC like this fall. This is awesome, and it would have been terrible, but they literally, like, David Alpert, my producing partner, tells this great story about how NBC called, and they were like, hey, we want to make a TV show about The Walking Dead. And he was like, you realize The Walking Dead is about zombies, right? And they were like, yeah. Because you realize that zombies, you know, eat people, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, you can't put people eating people on NBC. He's talking about the head of NBC. And the guy goes, we're changing things up. We're going to be a new NBC. It's going to be awesome. And Albert's like, okay, sure. And so then the script comes in like a few months ago. And this is after they were like, oh, it's totally a lock, like, this is all just formality, we're totally gonna make this, don't worry. I bought a big TV and a boat. I didn't. I could barely afford the TV. But anyway, so the script comes in and the head of NBC calls and is like, yeah, we're passing. He's like, what do you mean we're passing? And he goes, DA, we can't put zombies on NBC. But what happened after that was that, you know, I had made a lot of concessions in my life to make the NBC deal happen because Walking Dead was very successful, and I had an entire merchandise line of T-shirts and statues and little things like that, you know, kept the book, you know, going and made it more profitable so that Charlie and I could continue to, you know, put issues out as fast as possible. And it was, you know, it was a very important part of the Walking Dead engine in the early days. And I put it all on hold for the NBC show, because typically a lot of times a company like NBC will be like, well, we're getting merchandise now, so you got to shut your merchandise down. And so so I agreed to that. But then when the NBC thing fell apart, you know, I just said, you know, we're not doing that anymore. Like, I'm waiting until the deal is absolutely perfect and it's something that I want to do, and you know, I want to be able to make my own merchandise, and you know, like, I can't stop the stuff that I'm already doing in order for the promise of a TV show that may not happen. And so that's why we just kind of sat back and said no to people for many years. You know, a lot of different outlets, you know, wanted to make Walking Dead, and you know, it took a while to get to a point where AMC would give us exactly what we wanted, and that allows us to make games like the Telltale game and do our shirts and things like that everybody likes, our own action figures and stuff like that.
So it seems like, you know, Frank Darabont, Glenn Mazzara, Scott Gimple, they all have different approaches to how they handle storytelling. It seems that Scott Gimple is a little more faithful to the source material, or at least he likes to know a little bit more about it, and I know he talks about his remix approach.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how you work with him on that and how involved you are? And like, he's like, hey, like, Carl's gonna get bit. Like, how does that go down? How does he keep you involved in that, and how does that decision get made?
Scott and I talk all the time. I mean, he'll text me sometimes and be like, oh, it looks like the story might be going this way, or, you know, he'll call me and, you know, say, you know, what's your temperature on this kind of thing happening? And we talk everything through. I mean, there have been some times in the past where I've, you know, been able to say, well, you know, I see that the story is going in this direction, but you are aware of these 6 stories in the comic book that would have to change because of that, but you don't know about these 4. And he'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can get back on track so that we don't, you know, bowl over those stories. And so, you know, we work together in tandem to make sure that everything is, you know, buttoned up and makes sense, and that we're not, you know, we're not losing anything by changing the show. You know, there are fundamentally different things about the show that radically change the story. Just the existence of Daryl and, you know, Andrea not being present in a lot of the stories, and, you know, that kind of starts a ripple effect that moves throughout the entire story. And so managing that is something that Scott and I, you know, work pretty closely on.
Do you like having that, like, what if alternate timeline so that you can, you know, kind of see, like, hey, like, this is the way this character, like, Carol's a great idea of that. So you like having that?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun for me as a creator just to be able to, you know, have like a second time at bat, you know, and it's also fun to be able to be like, hey, when we killed Glenn in the comic, people were super angry, so let's kill Glenn and Abraham. Wouldn't that be fun?
No.
She is awesome!
Sure it was. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, we do stuff like that.
For now, I want to turn it over to the audience for a little bit. Let's see where our 6-man people are. Do we have someone over here? Hands up. So does anyone have questions? Just raise your hands and we'll get closest to the mic. So right there, what's your name?
I will be evasive if I must.
What's your name, where you're from, what's your question?
My name's Aura, I'm from New York. My question is, are there any specific changes from the comic book to the TV show that you specifically wanted to see and that you suggested or said, I'd like to do it this way?
Yeah, I mean, along the way, there've been a lot. I mean, I think I was the first person in the room to say, you know, we probably shouldn't cut off Rick's hand. You know, that was a big discussion for a long time. You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there've been a lot of different things along the way. I have trouble pinpointing exactly. I mean, the Abraham Glenn twofer was one thing. Although I tried to push Rick to be Daryl for a while. Maybe I'm kidding, but yeah, and I do try to kill Judith every season, and it never works. I'm not kidding about that. I really, yeah, in the No Way Out part of the Alexandria attack, I really wanted that baby to get eaten. But what was that? Oh yeah, the annoying one. The one Judith that is the worst is the doll Judith that I had to deal with on season 5. It was like sitting in the corner of the church one time when we were filming, and it's just horrific. Like the skin color is all wrong, and it's got like really dead looking eyes, but it's like very realistic looking doll. Like when I'm on camera, you can't tell. It's not like that one Clint Eastwood movie. But yeah. Yeah, I'm just going after all the old directors tonight. But yeah, took me out of the movie, that one. You gotta,
It really did.
Just just hold a baby for a minute. They're everywhere. You can find a baby almost anywhere. So anyway, yeah, the Judith baby doll is scary. What was your question?